Hi, it's Andy, and today I'm bringing you my December wrap-up. Yes, we have the final wrap-up of the year, and I'm very excited. This was a good one. I think this was definitely one of my best. I don't know if it was ranking-wise, but it felt like one of my best. You know what I mean? And my hair is just annoying me now. Yeah, so I'm just going to go over what I read, and you know the drill by now. So in the month of December, I read 17 books, finished 17, and DNF'd one. So I'll go over the DNF first, and that was Atalanta by Jennifer Saint, unfortunately. I was not excited for this book. I was not looking forward to this book. In fact, this is one of the books I was actively avoiding reading, and so I made myself read it because it was literally just sitting there staring at me on my TBR cart, and I couldn't sit and let it stare at me any longer. But this follows the story of Atalanta, who is a devotee, as it were, of Artemis. If it was Percy Jackson, she'd be a hunter of Artemis. Oops, smacked it off my water bottle. And then I'm assuming something happens because she becomes an Argonaut. She goes with Jason on the, she goes with Jason on the Argo. And yeah, I didn't even get that far. I did not even get that far. I've had a real problem. If you've been here for a little while, you will know that I've been having a problem with Greek retellings. I've been really, it's not even been a hit or a miss, it's just been a miss the whole time. And I fully blame Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes for that. I read that, it was so awful that it just did something, and now I can't read Greek retellings of a similar vein. So like Greek retellings from the woman's point of view, which I was loving. You'll see, like in previous videos where I've read them, I've got a few on my shelves over there, and this one is just falling foul to the Stone Blind effect, unfortunately. Nothing wrong with the book, it's purely how I feel about Greek retellings at the moment. So on to the books that I did actually read and complete. The first is An Immense World by Ed Yong. This is one of the best non-fiction books I have read, hands down. This was fantastic. This is about animal senses. So its subtitle is How Animal Senses Reveal the Hidden Realms Around Us. So it talks about the different things that other animals can see, taste, touch, feel, etc, etc, etc. Because animals interpret the world in a totally different way than we do. Like obviously yes, other animals can see, for example, like dogs can see and smell and hear, and they have like different variations of the senses that we have, but they also don't have similar, like their main sense is their smell, whereas I think our smell is, I wouldn't count that high up on like my priority list. Like I was saying while I was reading this that I think our sight and our hearing are our two sort of most important senses. Like they're how we mainly navigate the world. We don't navigate by scent, and yet dogs mostly navigate by scent. Like a lot of things that dogs do is by scent, and not all dogs, obviously. Sight hounds obviously have like the sight hound thing, but other things like the fact that elephants let off sounds that are so low pitched that we can't hear them, but they can hear them over like vast distances. And same with whale song, they can hear that over stretches of distances we couldn't even think about hearing someone yelling at us, you know. To the ways that insects sense things with chemical sensors, to the way that bees and birds have electromagnetic sensors. Like birds have electromagnetic sensors, they think in the beak. And just so many animals in here were just so unbelievably interesting. Like this was absolutely fascinating. And I think the thing that did this its greatest benefit, which is hilarious considering I read another book similar but ended up not liking it. So this is a book not written by a specialist. So Ed Yong is in fact a journalist, and what he did is he spoke to specialists and used his journalistic ability to turn their expert jargon, as it were, into understandable. Like I think anybody could pick this up and quite easily get on board with it and understand it. Even the technical bits, I think he broke down beautifully. I am not an animal expert in any way at all, and he breaks it down into like sections. So he'll do like chemical sensing, like smell, light, colour, pain, heat, like things like that, like it's split into sections so you can go over different things. It's so well done, honestly, and the audiobook is excellent. I listened to this and I was absolutely fascinated by what he was saying. But I've read another book that was also by a journalist, but she was writing as the professional in, I think it was like forensic things, and to me, I didn't like that. And she also made it about like, it was like a biography, but also a biography in the cases that she'd covered as a journalist, and I didn't like the format of how she'd written it. But this is very much he doesn't insert himself into it very much. Like, yes, he goes and he talks to people and he says like, I went to see this person at Oxford, or I went and spoke to so and so at whatever, but it was so much more about the expert themselves and what they were studying. All in all, this was just an unbelievably fantastic non-fiction, and it made me want to go and research animal senses, because if you think you know anything about animals and their senses and how they like inhabit the world, we've not even hit the tip of the iceberg. Next, I read a book that had been sitting on my TBR for a while and I genuinely did not think I was going to like, and that is The House of Soaring Stars by Beth Cartwright. I bought this because it was pretty. I'm not going to lie to you. It is historical fiction and it's pretty, but I normally don't like things where it's like, and the mystery that they uncover when they go to this house will change their lives forever. Like, I don't like those kinds of books. If I read that kind of thing on a blurb, I'm like, on a synopsis, I'm like, no thank you. Like, I don't like Jenny Fagan's Luck and Booth, for example. I won't read that because of the synopsis and because of it having this whole thing about the mystery and yada yada yada. I don't want to read that, even though I've read a previous Jenny Fagan, Hex, and absolutely loved it. So if anything, I should give that author a try, but I just don't like this whole like secrets of the building, sort of like secrets of the history of like their parents. I don't like those sort of things. So by all rights, I shouldn't have liked this book, but I loved it. I thought it was great. It's very much, at the same time, it's not like a great literary fiction thing. I'm not saying it couldn't use improvements. There are definitely places where I would want her to expand or improve on certain things, but I loved the characters. I loved it wasn't even necessarily a mystery, it was like a feeling of ominousness within the house that she didn't quite understand, and it moved at a fast pace. The characters, I loved them. There was enough mystery to keep me intrigued, but there was this fanciful thing to go with it. So this is about a character who is supposed to get married to this horrible, horrible man who lives in the street for her and basically wants to just collect her. He's disgusting. And she gets a letter inviting her to this house, and she's invited to make marchpane, which is like a marzipan treat of some kind, because she is the marchpane girl. And so she decides to go to this house and live there, and this is a house where people go, I see it as people go there to grieve. People go there to tell their stories and let go of intense grief. And she's the only one there that doesn't have that. So like everybody else that's there that she meets has this weight, this grey cloud, this intensity of grief about them. And she's just there to make marchpane, apparently. But obviously that's not why she's there. And there's this ominous about this house. Like, the house itself is taken on this grief of these people. But then she finds a library, and the library is this incredible place where people's stories are kept. And there's the woman that looks after the library. She's not a librarian, but she's a story collector. She's a writer. And she is kind of where the magic is. It's literal magic, not like the magic, like actual like magic. She collects people's stories and like brings them. She goes out on the ship and brings the stories back. It's incredible. That's one of the things I'd like to have like expanded on a wee bit. And there's also a mystery with this woman that sort of seems to be haunting the house. And again, I would have liked that to be expanded on a bit. But all in all, this was solid. I really enjoyed it. There was a lot going on, and I think she just no more managed to keep everything juggling nicely. I definitely see this easily sort of tipping into, like, it could have been quite bad, but I think she kept it right on that line. of having a lot going on and still being able to sort of juggle it, if that makes sense. I hope this is making sense. And see, beautiful and beguiling, Jennifer Saint, best-selling author of Ariadne. I'm pretty sure that's probably why I bought it. And also because, look how pretty. Oh yeah, there's also the thing with these keys and the key maker. There's a whole thing, like there's a whole thing, but you get to like, you have to go through it to get it, you know? Next is Other Lands by Thomas Halliday. This was, funny enough, I did a coin flip for An Immense World and Other Lands because I was doing this TBR as part of Criminal Bingo, and that is on Gem's Discord. It's a thing she did for Christmas. I'll link Gem down below. But yeah, this is basically about plants, as you can see. But this one, so Thomas Halliday is an expert, and this is where I find the line for experts writing books like this can be a bit. This book wasn't. I don't think this is very accessible. It was quite dry. It was like, I'm going to tell you facts, but I'm going to make it fun. So what he did was he started at, so he starts at the Pleistocene and talks about, which is 20,000 years ago, and talks about the different things that you would find. Like, specifically the Pleistocene in Alaska. And then he goes back to the Miocene, which is 5.33 million years ago, and this time in Italy, and what we would see then. And like, I can see what he's done to try and make it fun, but it was just so much jargon just like wedged into this book. It wasn't fun to read. I think this would be much, and I don't know if there is a TV version of this, but this would make an excellent document. It's like the whole Walking with Dinosaurs thing. And I know like some people, Vicky, would find that fun in a book as well, maybe, but I think the writing on this just missed the mark a little bit. This is where like somebody who's used to writing academic texts and not articles, like writing for journals and stuff like that, that is where they kind of fall flat for me a little bit sometimes, is if they're not used to breaking things down for laymen. It can all get very jargony and get very technical, which I feel like, as I said, Ed Young is a journalist, he knows how to talk to the masses. I just feel like Thomas Halliday didn't quite hit the mark on that one. He needed somebody to zhuzh it up a wee bit, you know? Does that make sense? Next, I read Our Last Days in Barcelona, which is the 5th and the penultimate book in the Cuba saga. And honestly, I enjoyed this more than I thought I was gonna. So there's a point in time in one of the other ones, and I can't remember what it's called, When We Left Cuba. There's a point in When We Left Cuba which follows Beatrice Perez, and she goes to Spain and her family don't know what she's doing, she has no contact with them, stuff happens, and this is her sister Isabel, who's come to Spain to find out what happens, like what is happening to her sister. So this is Isabel spending time in Barcelona away from her husband, who he's not bad in the way of like, he's not abusive, he's not nasty, he's not unkind in any way. They just probably shouldn't have gotten married. It was one of those marriages of like a social standing sort of marriage, and they're not really getting on, but not in a way where it's like they're fighting and they're arguing and stuff like that. They just live separate lives and neither of them seem happy. So she goes over to Barcelona to spend some time there and just get away and just spend some time without him and get back on her own 2 feet, while also finding out what happened to her sister, who's gone missing by her standards. This then also follows their mother, because she also at one point, when Isabel was young, disappeared off to Barcelona. And they know this because Isabel finds a photo of her mother and her outside this cafe in Barcelona. And her mum is adamant that she's never been to Barcelona. Isabel has never been to Barcelona. She doesn't know what they're talking about. And so they're trying to figure out what's happened there as well. So you also get to go back and view their mother, who's Alicia. Marta's their aunt. Alicia Perez, who basically runs away from her husband because they're not getting on. And she takes Isabel and she runs to Barcelona because that's where her parents went after the Revolutionary War in Cuba. But at the time that Alicia is there, there's also a civil war brewing in Spain, and it is not safe. and she meets someone there that she becomes very close to. She sees some things that, you know, historical things that sort of scar her for the rest of her life. And because I think she goes back during, 1936. So there was a war, the Second World War was happening at the same time. And there's also a lot of civil unrest in Spain at the time. And yeah, not particularly safe place to be, which you don't really associate with Spain. So it's really interesting seeing these places that I've never thought of in history for. So yeah, I love this. This was fantastic. This was a fantastic edition. I did not expect it. Like I say, I did not expect to enjoy it like I did. But I'm so glad, and I'm so excited to read the last one in this series. Next was In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. This is the second in the Love Like Farms series. I don't know if there's another series name for it. I just call it Love Like Farms series. But this is the second book, and this follows a character from two characters really from the first book, but I'm not going to spoil it. And yeah, this is kind of a second chance romance. So the characters met a while back and had a one night stand, and then they meet again and sort of have to navigate their feelings about that, and the fact that they still have feelings for one another. And you know, it's just, and it's funny because these two characters come from completely opposite worlds. It's so interesting. I actually liked this a lot more than the first one, but that makes sense because the first one's friends to lovers, and that's not one of my favourite tropes. This kind of second chance romance I really like. I said in a previous video, the second chance romances where couples have broken up for a reason that is a good reason for them to break up, and then they get back together again. I'm not really for that. Like, if there's one piece of advice I think I can tell you, and from experience, it is never a good idea to get back with your ex. There are exceptions. Like, I know a couple who both needed to, and I love this again in my romance books, who decided to take a step back and split up because they both needed to work on their mental health, they both needed to work on their physical health, and they both needed to sort of work on themselves separately to be a good partner for the other. But they weren't having they didn't need the extra hang on of like the stress of the partnership. Like, they made an adult decision that we are not in a place right now where this relationship can thrive, and we're not in a position where we can like make this relationship thrive without going away and doing some work. And so that, fair enough, if you split up and do that, that's fine. That, I think, is a great idea. If you do that, that is honestly so mature. But usually there's a good idea. Like, if he cheated on you, don't get back together with him, he will do it again. If he was awful to you, don't get back together with him, he will do it again. I am telling you from experience, do not get back with these toxic guys or girls. Just don't do it. But all my toxic exes have been men, so from that experience, don't get back together with them. These two didn't split up. They had a one night stand and then, like I say, met later on again. And so that kind of second chance where they're like, actually, I had a really good experience that night. What could this actually be? While also being in like portions of their lives where they're starting new things and learning more about themselves. And it's just, I love the way B.K. Borison writes, but this book in particular was so good. The third one though, I've already started it, and oh my god, fake dating trope, and I'm going to eat it up. Next, I finished the book, the legend, the stress-inducing tome that is The Fragile Threads of Power. If you know, again, if you've been here for a little while, you'll know this book has been haunting not only me, but Jem and my other friends. So the lore behind this is that Jem put this in my 12 and 12 jar, which is that jar there, and then felt so bad because I really wanted to read it and then I had to wait for it to come out of the jar. She did offer to pick a new one, by the way. Can I just say, she did offer to like change her pick, and I was like, no, I can do this. And to the benefit of us all. So Jem felt so bad that she decided to buddy read it with me. She was like, look, when it comes out of the jar, I will buddy read this with you. And I was like, excellent. Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. I am there for it. And then she started having a bit of issues where she was having a slump with fantasy, and she was like really stressed out because if it came out and she didn't like it, she was going to be really stressed because this is technically, it's the first Threads of Power book, but it is the fourth, technically, in the Darker Shade of Magic world. So there's the Darker Shade of Magic trilogy, and then this book comes 7 years after, 8 years after, something like that. And so you're back with characters you love, you're back in a world that you love, and it is one of Jem's favourite series, the first series. And so she was so stressed that she was going to dislike this one. And as the year went on, and it kept not coming out of my jar, we started piling on people for a buddy read. And it was beautiful. So in December we said, okay, let's go. Because obviously it was my December pick. I chose it in November, so everybody had a month's notice. And I was like, nobody's getting surprised. We're reading Threads. And I mean, obviously they would have known because I only had 2 left in November and picked one out. But anyway, everybody knew in November that we're reading it. I kept periodically reminding people that we're reading it in December. And then at like the middle of the afternoon on the 1st or something, I was like, should I set a buddy read like group chat up? And they were like, yeah, let's set a buddy read group chat up. And then Tori was like, should we just start reading it now? I'm like, yeah, let's start reading it now. So I split it up. Well, I just split it up. I went through the book and looked for like splits because to do it like over so many days, you need to see like how many chapters. I was looking at like chapters and stuff like that, but this book is specifically split into 12 parts. And so I was like, cool, 12 days, 12 parts. I broke it down into pages and stuff like that for everybody. So we knew what pages we were reading each day, and we ended up reading the last 2 pages, the last 2 sections in one day. So we actually read it over 11 days. And oh, I love this. I love the way we read this. I loved reading it like 1 section a day with everybody, and we were chatting about it, and it was beautiful. Honestly, it was fantastic. Sorry, I just want to show you the edges again. This book follows old characters, like I said. So we have everybody back that we know and love. Everybody back that we know and love from the previous series, and we also have a few new characters in here. And I don't think there was a single character in this that I did not like, genuinely. And I like, see, when you add new characters to stuff that's already established, it can really be hit or miss, but V. Schwab just does not miss. I don't particularly want to say what happens in this book, because like I say, it's like the 4th in A Dark Shade of Magic, but sort of overview of A Dark Shade of Magic. There are 4 Londons. So there's Red London, which is thriving with magic. There is Grey London, which is basically our world, but back in the time of King George, the one from Bridgerton, and Hamilton. And there is White London, which had magic and is now void of magic. And there's Black London, which is sealed off and has been destroyed by magic, and nobody goes there. Now, the worlds are not open. They used to be open, but now there are only specific magicians that can go between the worlds, and they are called Antari. And of course, our main character for A Dark Shade of Magic, Kel, is one of these Antari. And so you follow him as he goes through the different Londons as part of a royal envoy, or not an envoy, what's the word? He's like the emissary, almost, for the royal family. And Kel can go to all these Londons, except Black London, because we don't go to Black London. Black London, no. So, of course, there's more to the story than that, but I love it. Honestly, even if you're not a fantasy reader, A Dark Shade of Magic is just a fantastic world. It's set in London, and London is very... It's not our London, obviously, but it's familiar enough that the fantasy elements aren't jarring, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not a fantasy reader, but I absolutely loved Dark Shade of Magic, and I love this. I just thought this added to it so well, and I'm so excited to see where it's going, but we're going to have to wait, because after Bury Our Bodies in the Midnight Soil, we're supposed to be getting the next book from the Vicious series, and then we're getting this next book. So 3 more books to go before we can get this book. Next, I read a book that I am absolutely kicking myself that I hadn't read earlier, and that is That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. This book is the highest stake, low stake book I've ever read, and it is unbelievably funny. Like, it is filthy, it is crass, it is smutty, but oh my god, it's absolutely hilarious. Like, there's no... If you're looking for, like, action-packed fantasy, like, I don't even know if you'd like this. Like, the thing I dislike about a lot of fantasy and stuff like that is, like, watching your characters go through hell and watching them go through wars and stuff like that, which is fantastic. Like, honestly, like, go off writers that do that, because the reason I don't like it is because it makes me feel physically sick. Like, watching the characters go through... You know how there's always that thing where, like, they'll go into a fight and then they'll start losing and then they'll be alright at the end of the day. Like, you know, that sort of thing. That doesn't happen in this. Like, everything goes their way. It's like, literally, it's like a spoof fantasy romance. That's really what it's like. Like, everything that can go their way goes their way. And there's no... But the stakes still feel really high. Like, it's so low stakes because you know it's going to be fine, but it's so high stakes because, well, she has to kill a goddess with the help of a dragon that she accidentally saves. And the dragon's also like really hot. But like, it's just... he's a shifter, he's not an actual dragon. I should have said that. He's a man, but he has horns. And he can turn into a dragon. But he's a man. I should have specified that. Anyway, if you've been even remotely thinking about picking this up, do it. Honestly, like I said, filthy, crass, but absolutely hilarious. And the smut in this is the smuts. But yeah, I'm reading the second book in January. And again, actually no, that's a lie. It's not a lie. I am reading it in January, but the lie is that I've already finished it. And it was also excellent. And I cannot wait to go to the third one because it's exciting in two very poignant ways. Next, I had a break from my physical books and decided to read some KU. So the first thing I read was Sinbin by Anastasia White. And this is because I really want to read the third book in the series, but it's the third book in the series. So since I have KU, I decided to read the first book so that I could then read the second book, so that I could then read the third book. Are you following? We're good. Okay. So Sinbin is an enemies to lovers, almost soft bully romance, I think, because you know how enemies to lovers is normally like they're just like a bit snidey to each other, and like that's these two meet, and the first interaction they have is him threatening her and her smacking him. Like, physically assaulting her and him having to be dragged out before he smacks her back. Like, these two spit feathers at each other. These two hate each other. But he's also, like, he's not a nice guy, but he is a nice guy. Like, when he finds out she needs help, he wants to help her because he's not, like, he's not a horrible person, but at the same time, he's, oh my god, he's horrible. Like, he is what you actually get when it comes to varsity players in college, because this is a college romance. Like, he's up his own ass. He thinks he is God's gift to not even just women, but everybody. Like, he can't see himself doing any wrong. He is arrogant. He is the worst. I hate him. Like, he is almost irredeemable in my eyes. Like, I do not, like, normally when there's like a hate to love, or like a enemies to lover, more hate to love than enemies to lover, actually, this book. But like, see when it's that, normally I'm like, oh, there's like a little bit of like tension. There's that whole thing of like where you don't want somebody to know you like them, so you're a bit mean to them, sort of tension going on. This is really just like, he is actually vile. Like, he's vile. I don't like him at all. And I was reading it and I was like, he's gonna have to do something seriously 180 to even redeem himself for me to accept that she would go out with him. Like, and the thing is, she's a total bitch as well. Like, she talks without any filter system with her brain. And she's a bit of an arse. Like, that's the problem. Like, they're both not great people. And I'll be honest with you, I gave this book a 2.5 star because it was not good. But in saying that, I don't like bully romances, and it was quite leaning towards like I said, he's awful to her. Like, he's awful. So it's kind of leaning into like the bully romance. Sorry, Hamish. I'll get with your way. It's leaning into the bully romance thing. Like, not. I've read the first Zodiac Academy, and not like the best one of those guys is kind of like him. Like, not the worst ones of the four, but like the best one, that's kind of where we are. Like, it's kind of bully romance-ish, and I don't like that. I don't fuck with that. I hate bully romance. I don't understand how anybody can read it, because I just find the characters irredeemable, and if I find the characters irredeemable, I can't read the book. So yeah, I'm still planning on reading the second book and the third book, because, like I said, the biggest problem I had with it was the sort of, not the tropes, but also the tropes. You know what I mean. Next up, I finally read That One Night by Emily Rath. Now, this is a prequel novella. It's only 124 pages, and it is about how Rachel and Jake met pre-Pucking Around. So Pucking Around follows Jake and Rachel, and they had a one-night stand, didn't tell each other their names, left no information, no contact information, nothing like that. and then Pucking Around, obviously they meet when Rachel gets a job working with his hockey team, and so chaos ensues. That One Night, however, is literally just a novella, a short story of how they met, like that one night, like how they, you know, it's Ellie-Rath. It is hella smutty. But yeah, it just gives you that a little bit more context for the rest of the books, or the rest of the book, because each of the Pucking books follows different characters. Anyway, then on top of that, I decided to read Pucking Ever After Volume 1 and Pucking Ever After Volume 2. We are getting Volume 3 at some point, guys. We are getting Volume 3. And this pretty much just follows characters. Pucking Ever After Volume 1, it mostly follows Rachel and Co. From the first book. And then we get a little bit more from Tess and Ryan from Pucking Wild in Volume 2. Because like that's when the books are intermittently written, and the stories kind of go all over the place. It's just like snippets and points in time, either through out the books or in the future, or like just snatched through, just to give you a little bit more from the characters. Really, is all that it is, and I loved that. I absolutely loved it. Not all of them are like smutty things. Some of them deal with family. Some of them deal with pregnancy and complications in pregnancy, and it's like one of the stories is a really scary birth story. So yeah, it really covers like quite a lot of ground with like the different members of our cast. And then I read Dawn Study by Maria V. Snyder. This is book 9 in the Chronicles of Ixia, and obviously our 9th book in the Chronicles of Ixia read along. This is it finished. This is basically the main story arc finished. All we've got left now are the short stories and the first 3 from Valak's point of view, which is just terrifying, but also incredible. So that's 9 books. 9 books. I don't even know if I can... Like, obviously I can't tell you about this book because it's book 9 of a series. But I also don't feel like the synopsis for Poison Study, which is the first one, really gives the right scope for this series. So Poison Study follows Yelena, who is in the dungeons of the commander of Ixia's castle. And because she is sentenced to death and she is the next due to die, when the commander's food taster dies, she is given the choice, as are every person who's on death row, or the next person to die on death row when the food taster dies, given the choice to become the new food taster or go to the gallows. And so she says, I am not dying, and she goes to be the new food taster. And so that comes with the added pleasure of having Valak, who is the commander's right-hand man and chief of security, teaching her how to identify and taste different poisons, hence Poison Study. But of course, it being fantasy and it being a 2000s fantasy, and there's a little bit more going on with her and Valak, and so much more going on in the world. Like I said, the synopsis for Poison Study just does not give the scope to this series. It just continues to branch out in each book that you read, and it all comes to a conclusion in this book. And I think it was done fantastically well. It was brilliant. This is my favourite. It's between this and Night Study. It genuinely, the series just gets better as you read it. So if you're struggling, I would say keep going. I think it's worth it, but I am doing the read along with it. So, like I say, if you want, keep going, but I'll put the read along information in the duplicate. Next up, I read Pole Position by Rebecca J. Caffrey, and this is a male-male F1 romance. And honestly, normally, I would not have picked this up, but Bobby, one of my friends, she loves this book and recommended it, and so I saw it in the romance bookshop in Edinburgh, and like I was a little bit out of control that day. I bought a lot of books that day. A lot of books. I almost bought stuff that I really wouldn't read, but I kind of drew myself back enough to just get what I needed. Anyway, wanted. But this was one of those, and yeah, this is not a book I would pick up off my own back because I don't like F1. The most I know about F1 is Cargo Vroom. Like, yeah. That's it. Like, that is, F1. Woo, Cargo Vroom. And yeah, this is about 2 drivers. So we've got one seasoned driver and we have one who's just come up from the lower levels because his racing partner gets injured in a way that means he can't race, and immediately there's like animosity between them. And I liked it because the animosity made sense, because this guy was just an idiot. I said that to Bobby. I was like, he's just an idiot and he doesn't like change. So like, combine big mouth idiot with guy who's already reeling from the fact that there's change and there's a lot going on in his life outside of it, you get two people who don't get along or don't even try to get along. It is like, he's like an overeager puppy. He really, really is, and he's not taking the hint just to back off a little bit, which obviously irritates this guy. I can't even remember the names. Kian and Harper. Yeah, Kian and Harper. His name's Harper James, so I was like, is his name Harper or is his name James? Harper James. So yeah, Kian and Harper, and I love this. I thought this was great. Obviously, there's like bits about F1 and about the cars and about the technicalities of different stuff, or not necessarily like the technicalities, but like there are bits where they're in the car and they're talking about like different things, and a lot of it just went over my head, not gonna lie, but it wasn't like a massive thing in it, so it didn't really like, it was enough to keep it interesting and different from other books I read, but not enough for me to be like, I'm totally lost in what you're talking about and now I'm out of the book, if that makes sense. But the characters themselves were so well written, the characters had so much depth, they made sense in so many ways. They made sense as people with complicated lives. Like, yeah, the drama was turned up, but like, of course it is. I can't remember, there was Kian actually reminds me quite a lot of Willa from Heartless. It makes sense if you've read both, I think. But yeah, this one surprised me and I really enjoyed it. Next up, I read The Wrong Mr. Right by Stephanie Archer. I don't know what I was going to say there, but it wasn't Stephanie Archer. This is the second in the Queen's Cove series. And again, like with the other one, I preferred this to the first one. The first one was like it was a marriage of convenience or fake dating engagement of convenience. This is more of a, not fake dating, but like he's teaching her how to be a hot girl, is how she puts it. And she is taking over his social media because he's trying to be a pro surfer. He made it to the competition the year before, but choked, and so he is going for it again this year. And there's so much complexity in this novel because she owns this bookstore and her mum started it and then her mum died, and since then her dad has refused to change anything about it. So this bookstore has not changed since the 90s. Like, the carpet's the same, the shelves are the same even though they're breaking down, the decor's the same. It's just not, it's not what she wants it to be, and she wants it to be great. And so she has this sort of endeavour to make the bookshop popular again. And he wants to be a pro surfer, so he's trying to focus on that, she's trying to focus on that, but they are kind of drawn together. I love this. Like, the minute, like, I love Hannah. She is honestly one of my favourite characters. She has this moment where she looks at herself, really right at the start of the book, and she's like, I'm almost 30. Like, she's turning 30 in like a month or so. She's like, and what do I have to show? And not in the sense of like, oh, I'm not married with kids, blah, blah, blah. She does have that conversation with herself because by the time her mum was there, she had the business, like the bookshop, yada yada. But she was like, I'm not happy how I am right now, and I want to take some active steps to change that and make myself happy. And she does. She's so courageous and brave in the way that she does that. And I really admire this character. I think she's great. She's one of those like quiet bookworms that has like, she just does that whole like finds her inner strength sort of like moment. And honestly, I love these two together. He softens with her and she becomes more confident with him, and it's not outside their character. It's not like they change for each other. They just sort of almost like settle into themselves more. The bits that they were not quite confident enough to bring out of themselves kind of get brought out in each other, if that makes sense. But yeah, I really enjoy this, and again, looking forward to reading the next one, which is about Holden, who's his brother. They're all about the same, about the brothers, all the Rhodes brothers. But yeah, I really enjoyed the series. Next up was Bad Luck Vampire. I was determined to get this reread finished in December. Like, I was going to the wire with these last few books, But Bad Luck Vampire follows Alistair Mackenzie, who I think we meet, or at least we meet some of his relatives in the previous book. And also Sophie, yes. Look at me remembering names. Who am I? Sophie has a little bit bad luck. So she's had 3 fiancés, and all 3 of them died in not so natural circumstances, as did her parents. And to top it off, so did one of her old friends, and we're like, maybe that's a bit suspicious. And she's like, no, it's just really bad luck. And then she meets Tybo. I know I just said Alistair. She meets Tybo, and he takes her to a wedding of the couple a few books back, or the last book, I can't remember. And who does she meet there but Alistair? And of course, she's Alistair's life mate, and things get a little bit complicated that night. But they just have a nice night. Her and Tybo have a nice night at the wedding, and then the next day, Alistair's uncles decide they're going to help him to woo her. And so they set up a series of things that happen where he ends up having to take her to lunch, and they end up spending the day together, and it's so cute. Like, he's one of those like quiet, grumpy souls where he kind of doesn't speak in sentences and only grunts and says one-word answers, but he's actually got like a heart of gold underneath. And yeah, she is so happy and so nice and so kind and so funny, and then just doesn't suspect anybody's out to get her until Alistair gets hit by a car. But that's after he's poisoned, and before somebody T-bones the car that his brother's in. His twin brother, by the way. Identical twins. And then they start to get a little bit suspicious that the history that Sophie has might not be so innocent. And so they have to find out who is coming after Sophie, or at least Sophie's loved ones, before something else happens. This again follows Lindsay Sand's whole, like, all the stories are the same. It's all the same basic underlying thing. And yeah, I just can't go wrong with these. These are like the ultimate comfort books for me. I just threw some treats for Hamish, and one landed on his back. It's just chilling. It's just chilling on his back. Hamish Bubba, it's on your back. Oh, there you go. Clever boy. You got it. So the next 2 books are the peak of the month, are the things that I've been looking forward to for so long. And first, I did my reread of Iron Widow, which follows Wu Zetian. I'm absolutely butchering that name, but my mouth can't do the thing to say it. And she is, historically, she's actually the first female emperor of China, but sorry, Hamish is under my chair. In this, she is out to get revenge for her sister's death. So in this world, there are these things called Huanduns, and they are these like big bug-like almost creatures that come out of the water, come out of the forest, like, and they attack the people. And in response to this, the people have created these chrysalises, which are like, think Pacific Rim. It even says like Pacific Rim meets Handmaid's Tale. And so these are like big creatures. So you've got like the 9-tailed fox, the vermilion bird, the white tiger, like all these things from Chinese mythology. And these are giant chrysalises, like the size of like multi-story buildings. And to drive these machines, you need 2 pilots. You need your regular male pilot who drives and does all the work, and the concubine pilot who's the female pilot who's there to be drained like a battery. And Wu Zetian says, absolutely not. No, this is not happening. One of the pilots killed her sister, and not even in the chrysalis, he just outright killed her. And so she decides to enlist to become a concubine for that specific pilot to get revenge and kill him. But she doesn't kill him the way she was expecting. She actually drains him dry inside the chrysalis, and they discover that she has a spirit pressure, or a chi, is so high that she could probably pilot one on her own, because it's higher than some of the other male drivers, pilots. And so she is put with the Iron Demon, who is a notorious pilot who has such a high spirit pressure, or chi, that he basically like drains every concubine in one go. And it's supposed to kill her, and again it doesn't. And she sets out, really afterwards, like it's a whole series of events, and she sets out to destroy the government of this world and take back women's rights to be human, because women really are treated poorly. Like, this is a mix of like Chinese folklore, mythology, and customs. Like, for example, the main character has her feet bound. People are happy when they have sons, but not when they have daughters. Things like that. Like, there's so much from Chinese culture that is woven into this. The author themselves is Chinese, and so hence why they write from that culture. But yeah, and so she decides to take down the government. Problem with taking down the government, though, then you have to do something about it when there's nobody to lead. So this follows our main character after the rebellion, after the takedown of the government. But things are a little bit more complicated than she thought. She's 18, she has no idea how to run a country. And it's not like the Hundans have stopped coming after the people either, but she doesn't want to kill any more concubine pilots. So yeah, there's a whole host of like political issues in this book, and there's a thing from the end of this book that I'm not going to tell you about because obviously spoilers. But this is Heavenly Tyrant, which is book 2, which is the last book I read in December in 2024. And this book, there's so much that happens that it feels like a much longer book. Like, I was reading this and I was like, I feel like I've read so much more than I've read because so much is happening. Like, there's so many things going on at once, and the way that this author manages to weave that all together, to spin all those plates, to just keep all these plot devices going in the air is absolutely incredible. Not once did I forget who was who and what they were doing or what they had done. Like, I had all the threads together in my head. Like, I knew what was going on. This, honestly, was absolutely fantastic. I loved it. I am looking forward to the next one. And one of the theories I had from the first one, I was correct. Not quite wholly correct, but I was correct. And I'm very happy about that. Yeah, this is one of the easiest 5 stars I've ever given out. And I absolutely adored the increased sort of information you get about Chinese culture and mythology and stuff like that. It's so interesting and woven into this world absolutely stunningly. So there we go. Those are the books that I read in the month of December. The books for the end of my year. And yeah, like I say, I think we had a really good month. Like, especially towards the end of the month, I was really enjoying what I was reading. So I'm so happy with that. All my books are now falling over, which is great. Oh, there are 2 still on the shelf. 2 out of the however many I've just shown you. Anyway, if you want to let me know you were here but you don't want to sit and leave a comment, if you leave me a dragon for Heavenly Tyrant and Iron Widow. And thanks so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye.